Shida ni mama va uvumbuzi. This is a Swahili saying that roughly translates to necessity is the mother of invention. I'd like you to keep that in mind as I speak to you today about a lot of the innovations that are happening in emerging markets that are in many ways leapfrogging what's happening in the developed world, largely as a result of a lot of the challenges and bottlenecks and inefficiencies that exist in these markets. So to begin, I'd like to start us off in rural Malawi, where a 15-year-old boy became frustrated a few years ago by the lack of power in his rural village. Now, he could have waited for a foreign manufacturer of renewable energy systems, like the ones we see here, to come in and donate or even subsidize equipment, but that would take very long and it wouldn't necessarily be very sustainable. Instead, he decided to take matters into his own hands, literally. He built with scrap metal his own windmills. This was a few years ago. These windmills now power his village with reliable electricity that they didn't have access to before. So I use this as an example because, as you can see, and this is a picture of him building the system, necessity truly is the mother of invention in these markets. And it is these type of innovations that provide really interesting and compelling investment opportunities. So these types of innovations are not only happening in Malawi, they're happening all over the emerging markets. So starting in Asia, for example, there's a company called Dr. Gratis that is a telemedicine company that allows individuals living in remote villages in Indonesia who have no access to doctors or healthcare to actually access a doctor through mobile phones, either with a phone consultation or even a video conferencing consultation. In Indonesia, there's only 2 doctors per 10,000 individuals. That ratio in the US is 20. So this company is proactively addressing this lack of access to healthcare by developing a new solution. It's been so successful in Indonesia that it actually expanded into Africa, particularly during the Ebola crisis. So in the US, telemedicine penetration is virtually non-existent, even though it could really significantly, potentially increase access to healthcare and also lower costs. So I think we have a lot to learn from companies like these in emerging markets. Another example going to Latin America is Argentina, where Quilimo is a company that seeks to address the impact of an increased frequency of droughts on food production by leveraging big data in the form of satellite imagery, weather information, and crop data to be able to allow farmers to specifically pinpoint the type of irrigation that's required for every individual crop. Their solution in Argentina has helped increase agribusiness yields by 30% while reducing water usage by 70%. So this solution is not only applicable to a market like Argentina, but really to the global agribusiness value chain, particularly given the increased frequency we're seeing of droughts and other extreme weather events. Now in Kenya, Safaricom, which is the dominant telecom operator in that market, decided to tackle head-on the lack of traditional financial services in that market by developing a mobile money ecosystem called M-Pesa, which literally means M-money in Swahili. This system has been so successful that executives from PayPal, American Express, Visa, MasterCard have traveled frequently to East Africa and met with Safaricom to try to learn from their innovation and see how they could adopt their own business models accordingly. So why has M-Pesa been so successful in Kenya? Let's dig into this a little bit more. They were essentially addressing gaps and bottlenecks that exist in the market. They were addressing infrastructure that simply did not exist and creating their own homegrown solution to address it. For example, ATMs, which we all take for granted here, are virtually non-existent in Kenya. There's only 11 ATMs per 100,000 Kenyan individuals. That ratio in the US is 173. So instead of waiting for all of these ATMs to be developed by a banking system that has very low penetration, Safaricom decided to rely on a human ATM network. And what I mean by that are actual agents. So this is a picture right outside of Nairobi of a shop owner who sells a wide variety of goods, but he happens to also be a mobile money agent. And what that means is that you could walk into a shop, give him money, deposit that into your mobile money account, and when you need money, you go to him, put in your PIN, and he'll give you money. So literally a human network of ATMs. There's 538 of these mobile money agents per 100,000 Kenyan adults. the penetration is significant. So there's not only a lack of ATMs in Kenya, there's also a lack of credit cards, which we all take for granted. So only 5% of Kenyan adults actually own a credit card. This ratio in the US is 60%. So instead of waiting for all these credit card companies to come into Kenya, Safaricom decided to bypass the whole system and develop a tap-and-go system. So every Kenyan has a phone in their wallet. You put on a sticker, and automatically you can tap and pay at any merchant you'd like directly out of your mobile money account. You don't need a bank account, and you don't need a credit card. This is rapidly expanding in Kenya, and it makes basically credit cards irrelevant. So as I mentioned, this has been tremendously successful. Today, 90% of Kenyans are registered mobile money users. And the value of transactions that flow through the mobile money system represent 44% of Kenya's economy. It's a massive backbone of the entire ecosystem and economy of Kenya. And the success of M-Pesa has also translated to strong returns for those who invest in Safaricom. So Safaricom is publicly traded in the Nairobi Stock Exchange. And since its IPO, the stock has increased 3 times its initial launch. And in the last 5 years, it's generated about 36% annualized returns in US dollar terms. Global equity returns over that same time period were 9%. So investors also got handsomely paid for the success of this innovation. So just a few examples to really illustrate how cutting-edge innovations coming from these markets, these homegrown solutions, are not only really interesting and fascinating to follow, but also really provide really interesting and compelling investment opportunities across all different sectors. And it's really critical when evaluating these opportunities to leave our home market biases at home. I'd like to end with a quick example of this where I specifically learned this lesson when I was 25 years old and decided to leave my job at JP Morgan to go to Kenya and work with a microfinance organization there called Kenya Women Finance Trust. This is actually a picture of me with a lending group that I worked with in Pikatoni, Kenya. So my concept was that I was going to come in and teach all the great lessons and best practices from Wall Street and New York that I learned over the years, implement them, and teach them how to do microfinance in Kenya. When I learned as a volunteer, I was very humbled, and I realized they already developed a lot of amazing solutions and new business models and ways to tackle the issues they were facing. What they needed me for was not to copy-paste a solution from New York, but rather to help them scale. And I'm really excited that today, as an investor in these markets, I'm able to help many of these solutions scale through investment capital. So these are some of the investment opportunities I'm really excited about, and I hope you are as well. With that, I'd like to pass it on to Jamie Merriman. Thank you.